After 1975, with the intention of confiscating houses and taking bribes, local officials came to my home and said that my family had to engage in increased production, meaning we had to farm, or have a certificate proving that we owned and cultivated farmland and gardens. Otherwise, we would have to hand our house over to the government and be sent to a new economic zone. Many families living around my neighborhood had to bribe local officials with countless taels of gold before they were allowed to remain in their homes. A few of the poorest households in the neighborhood had no gold to offer, so they were forcibly sent to new economic zones in remote, desolate places. Since they were city people who were not accustomed to living in harsh, isolated forest regions, many of them died there. My family absolutely refused to pay bribes. Instead, we spent 10 taels of gold so that I could buy a piece of farmland and build a small house on it, where I lived alone just to avoid further trouble. The area where I farmed was a small district. By chance, I became acquainted with several local young men who naturally became my friends and even regarded me as their big brother, although I did not have a single tattoo on my body. Among them was T, the youngest of 3 brothers. His family was considered quite wealthy in the area and made a living slaughtering pigs, selling live pigs and roasted pigs. They slaughtered and roasted pigs themselves, delivered them to the market for sale, and also slaughtered or roasted pigs for other people every day. Naturally, all 3 of T's brothers were highly skilled at slaughtering pigs. T showed me a knife about 3 handspans long and said, "Big brother, this is a pig throat stabbing knife. Look at how sharp the tip is." I asked, "What do you mean by a pig throat stabbing knife?" T replied, "I don't do much of the throat stabbing. Only my 2 older brothers specialize in that. When a pig has been tied up and is lying on the concrete yard, one of my brothers comes over and uses this knife to make a single deep stab into the pig's throat, piercing all the way to its heart. The pig only makes a few choking, gurgling sounds and then dies immediately. They're incredibly skilled. They only need to stab once. When we butcher the pig afterward, you can see the wound right in the heart. 10 pigs are the same. One stab and the pig dies immediately, no screaming and no struggling. That knife is used only for stabbing the throat. It isn't used for cutting meat at all. Yet it used to be about 7 tack long, and after years of use, it has become 1/3 shorter. Big brother, do you know how many pigs it has killed? It must be thousands." After that, I spent many evenings at T's house. Night after night, I witnessed T and his brothers stabbing pigs in the throat and butchering them exactly as T had described. I even saw with my own eyes the wound right in the middle of a pig's heart after it had been butchered. There is one particular point I want to emphasize here. Almost 99.9% of people who professionally slaughter pigs, cattle, or dogs seem to become so deeply accustomed to killing that the bloodshed gradually becomes part of their nature. As a result, they can more easily attack and stab other people without hesitation. That was precisely why the 3 T brothers were feared and respected throughout the district. At the slightest provocation, the T brothers would grab their knives and chase people around the market, slashing at them. Therefore, anyone who encountered them had to speak sweetly to them and flatter them. As the saying goes, when you walk with Buddha, wear a monk's robe. When you walk with demons, wear paper clothes. Therefore, when dealing with the T family, I could not simply behave like a wealthy young man from the city who had come to buy farmland, as the local people whispered behind my back. To subdue people like the T brothers, the best way was either to fight them or demonstrate martial arts. So I was forced to reveal my abilities. Fortunately, one day, T's brothers and I were drinking together with a group of local young men on the veranda in front of the house. Suddenly, a dog ran across the road and was hit by a small passenger bus. The vehicle drove away, while the dog was left dragging itself along the road, whining and barking loudly. Naturally, all of us ran out into the street. Someone carried the dog over, and someone happily laughed. "How lucky. We've got something extra to eat. If we butcher this dog, there'll be a whole pot of meat." T's brothers had previously heard me speak out against eating dog meat. So when he heard that, T's older brother immediately glared and shouted, "I already said we're not eating dog meat anymore. If any damn fool dares to eat this dog today, I'll chop him to death." At that moment, everyone was already fairly drunk. I was afraid a fight would break out, so I quickly took the dog and said, "Hey, put the dog down. Let me take a look." The poor dog was placed on the roadside. It dragged itself along while crying and barking, "Woof, woof." I saw tears running from its eyes, although I did not know whether they were caused by pain or whether it somehow understood that someone wanted to put it into a cooking pot. T said, "Big brother, its hind leg is broken." At that moment, I don't know whether it was because I felt sorry for the dog or for some other reason, but I suddenly took a cigarette from my pocket, lit it, and said, "Everyone, be quiet. Let me examine it. T, hold the dog for me." Until then, neither the local young men nor T's brothers had ever seen me do anything like this. So everyone immediately fell silent and watched. I had actually studied magical practices for many years, but T and his brothers knew nothing about it. I took a long drag from my cigarette and held my breath. Using the cigarette as though it were an incense stick, I drew a magical healing symbol for swelling and sprains over the dog's left thigh, about a handspan away from it. Then I blew a long breath, heavily scented with alcohol, toward the dog's injured thigh. After I had drawn the symbol and blown on it for the third time, something miraculous happened. The dog suddenly turned around, stood up by itself, then curled its tail and ran normally, as though its leg had never been broken. It did not even bark once to thank me. It simply ran away, probably because it was afraid of that crazy guy who had wanted to eat it earlier. Because of that incident, all the local young men, including T's brothers, became even more impressed and respectful toward me. Once all three brothers had come to fear and respect me, I began explaining Buddhist teachings about cause and effect to them. Whenever they were about to stab a pig in the throat, I would quietly recite a rebirth and liberation mantra in the background. The difficult part was that slaughtering pigs was the family's only livelihood. Nevertheless, after listening to me, they stopped using the pig throat stabbing knife. Instead, they began using electricity. They would tie the pig's legs together, attach a positive electrical wire to the pig's leg, then splash water on it to conduct the electricity to the negative side. The pig would immediately convulse and die, without having its throat stabbed. As for T, even before they began using electricity, after listening to me, he himself no longer dared to use the knife to stab pigs in the throat. 1 year after I became acquainted with his family, I tried to leave Vienna by boat, but the escape attempt failed. 2 years later, I returned. When we met again, T told me, "Big brother, what you said about karma back then was incredibly accurate." My second oldest brother later became addicted to drugs. He overdosed and died, but before he died, the sounds he made were exactly like the sounds of a pig whose throat had been stabbed, those same choking, gurgling sounds. What's more, he kept making those sounds, as though he were being slaughtered, for 3 whole days and 3 nights in the hospital before he finally died. I stood there listening and became so terrified that I had to run outside. It was horrifying. That really was karma appearing right before our eyes. Now my father finally believes it, too. Our entire family has stopped. We no longer work in the pig slaughtering business. We aren't as well off as we were before, but we're getting by. A meal filled with an abundance of meat and fish may be a pleasure enjoyed by most people. But that brief pleasure comes at the terrible price of pain and death for those animals. Could their souls truly feel no resentment? Could they not cling to the people who killed them and ate their flesh, seeking a way to take revenge? Please reflect deeply on this before every meal.